Today, you will discover the story of a shop that no one can find twice, hidden in the shadows of Battersea. An encounter with a mysterious old man and an unexpected gift leads a man to confront his own emptiness. What happens inside will change not only his life, but something much bigger. The sharp sound of tram wheels passing over a rail joint echoes like thunder down the empty street. I feel it vibrate through the cobblestones under my feet, but I don't look up. I'm used to that sound, just like everything else in this gray corner of Battersea. My life is a succession of identical days. The same tram, the same dark alley, the same gray faces with eyes that avoid contact. London has lost all its mystery for me. If there was ever magic in this city, it was buried long ago under dirt and soot. I walk with my hands in my pockets, head down, ignoring the glistening puddles of rain and the flickering yellow lights on the sidewalk. My only pleasure lately is the small indulgences I can still afford. A newspaper for half a penny. A bag of sweets that at least numb my tongue for a while. That's all that's left of life. Something cheap, brief, disposable. Then something stops me. At first, I don't know what it is. A flicker of colors, perhaps, reflected in a window or in the puddle in front of me. I look up, and there it is. The shop. It's as if it sprang from nowhere, right in one of the darkest alleys I know, like a flower blooming in a landfill. The glass of its window glows, illuminated by internal lights that shouldn't exist in such a run-down place. The objects behind the glass seem otherworldly. Tiny, hand-painted toys that look too alive to be mere figures. A miniature green bus catches my attention. It is so impeccably detailed that I can almost imagine it moving. Beyond it, a battalion of wooden soldiers stands in perfect formation. And the colors, I've never seen anything so vibrant. The toys seem to sing a silent song, as if mocking me, inviting me to come closer. I feel a strange pull in my chest, a sensation I don't recognize. Is it curiosity? Awe? It's been so long since I've felt this way that it almost hurts. I take a few steps forward and press my nose against the glass. The cold of the window contrasts with the warmth that suddenly rises up my neck. I stand still, gazing at the wonders in this little display, forgetting the world behind me for a moment. But I can't stay outside forever. Something inside me, perhaps the part that hasn't completely given up, tells me I must go in. That there's something in this place waiting for me. So I turn the doorknob and push, unaware that my life is about to change forever. The bell above the door rings as it opens, a sharp and ancient chime that seems to slide under my skin like a shiver. The shop's interior is even stranger than its display window. Despite the dim lighting, every object seems to shine with its own light. Shelves are filled with toys, wooden horses with thread manes, porcelain dolls with bright eyes, tiny trains with wagons that move at the slightest touch. But the most unsettling thing is the silence. No creak of the floor beneath my feet, no murmur from the street, just the faint hum of my breathing. "Welcome," says a voice from the back of the shop. I jump. I hadn't seen anyone when I entered. From the shadows emerges an older man, so thin and hunched that he seems like part of the furniture. His hair is white and unruly, and his face, wrinkled like an old piece of paper, wears a kind and oddly alert expression. "Are you looking for something in particular?" he asks, his soft voice filling the empty space. "No, just looking," I reply. My words sound hollow, barely audible. The old man smiles and walks to a counter. From underneath, he takes out a small wooden box and opens it in front of me. Inside is a row of wooden soldiers, each painted with seemingly impossible detail. The buttons on their uniforms, the feathers on their helmets, even the unique expressions on their faces. "These might interest you," he says, sliding the box toward me. "They're amazing," I murmur, leaning in for a closer look. "How much do they cost?" "Ah, no money is used here," the old man says, moving aside the hand I had already slipped into my pocket. "Here, we give gifts, not merchandise." I stare at him, confused. I don't understand. "You don't need to understand," he replies with a faint smile, as though that alone were sufficient explanation. "You just need to take what you need." "I don't even know if I need," I begin, but he interrupts me with a wave of his hand, as though he's used to such hesitation. "Everyone who enters here needs something, even if they don't know it yet." His words slide into my mind, planting a seed of unease I can't ignore. What is this place exactly? Why does it feel so different, so apart from everything else? Almost without thinking, I pick up one of the little wooden soldiers. Its surface is smooth, the paint seems fresh, as if it had just been applied. I set it back in the box, but the old man closes it and hands it to me. "It's yours," he says, with a firmness that brooks no argument. Before I can protest, the old man adds in a lower tone, "What is found here, young man, is not made to be sold. It is made to be given, and it always reaches those who need it." I want to ask more, to understand what he has just said, but something in his gaze stops me. I feel as though I've been given a task, though I don't know what it is. I leave the shop with the box in my hands, a mix of unease and curiosity growing in my chest. Something about this place doesn't add up, and my mind keeps circling back to that final phrase. It always reaches those who need it. What need do I have that I don't even recognize? The cold night air hits me as I step out of the shop. My hands clutch the box of toy soldiers as though letting go would be dangerous. For some reason, I feel exposed. I don't know if it's the echo of the old man's words or the strange calm of the shop, but my skin prickles. What kind of shop is this? Why do I feel as if I've just crossed an invisible threshold? I walk quickly along the wet pavement, wanting to put distance between the shop and myself, yet something feels off. The sounds of the city seem amplified, the screech of trams rounding corners, distant laughter from a pub, even the wind rustling dry leaves. Everything is heightened, as though the world had changed while I was inside the shop. I reach a corner and stop to catch my breath. The box in my hands feels heavier now. I try to calm myself. It's just a strange old man in a strange shop, I tell myself. That's all there is to it. But then I feel it. I don't know how to explain it, but I know someone is behind me. My heart pounds, as though trying to burst out of my chest. I turn quickly, but the street is empty. Everything seems in place. The streetlights cast their dim glow. The windows of the buildings are dark, and a cat lazily crosses the pavement in front of me. There's no one there. I take a deep breath and keep walking, faster this time. The box of toy soldiers creaks under the pressure of my fingers. Don't be paranoid, I mutter to myself, though my back feels cold, as if I were under someone's gaze. That feeling again. Someone is close. I glance over my shoulder as I walk, but all I see are elongated shadows in the flickering light of a lamppost. I quicken my pace, the echo of my footsteps ringing on the pavement. Except, there's something else. A second echo, out of sync with mine, faint but distinct enough to chill my blood. I stop abruptly, looking around. The second echo stops too. My breathing is a ragged whistle in the cold air. I glance toward the shop, but it's no longer in sight, hidden behind the curves of Battersea's narrow streets. For a moment, I feel tempted to go back, to demand answers from the old man, but the idea paralyzes me. I don't want to return. Not now. I want distance, clarity, and above all, to shake this cursed chill running down my spine. Yet something deep inside whispers that what I've brought with me won't let me escape so easily. I resume my march, looking straight ahead, ignoring the shadows that seem to shift at the edges of my vision. But the feeling doesn't fade, and with every step I take, it seems to resonate louder, as if the entire world knows that something has changed. Something within me. The early morning cold seeps into my bones as I stop in front of the shop. I shouldn't be here. Something tells me this is a bad idea, but I can't help it. The box of toy soldiers is still in my hands, like an anchor pulling me back to this place. The window display still glows, its warm and vibrant colors mocking the darkness of Battersea. The door is slightly ajar, as if waiting for me. I push it open carefully, and the bell above the entrance rings again. Its chime sends a shiver through me, but there's no turning back. The shop is empty, or at least it seems that way. The toys on the shelves are exactly as I remember them, motionless yet brimming with life, as though they were watching me. "I knew you'd return," says the old man's voice, emerging from the shadows. This time, I don't startle, though my whole body is tense. He steps out of the gloom, walking slowly toward the counter. He's wearing the same simple clothes, and his white hair looks even more unkempt than before. Yet there's something different about him, something I hadn't noticed earlier. His eyes shine with a mix of sadness and wisdom, as though they hold centuries of stories he hasn't shared. "What is this place?" I ask, my words coming out as a broken whisper. The old man doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he gestures toward the box I'm still holding. "What do you think of your soldiers?" I don't know what to think, I admit, feeling like a child caught in a lie. "They're perfect. Too perfect." "That's because they're not just toys," he says, leaning on the counter. "They're fragments of something the world has forgotten." His response makes no sense, but there's something in his tone that stops me from interrupting. "There was a time when the most important things couldn't be bought," he continues. "Joy, love, generosity. Those were given, not sold. But now, well, look around you. He gestures toward the window, as if he could encompass the entire city with a single motion. Now, people measure their worth by what they own, not by what they give. And this shop? Is it different? I ask, trying to follow his train of thought. This shop is what's left of a fading world, he replies. A place where gifts still have meaning, where small things can change lives. His words are heavy, laden with something I can't quite identify, and then he says it bluntly, as though it's no big deal. I am Santa Claus, he declares. My lips part, but no words come out. I wait for laughter, for a smile that turns it into a joke, but there's none of that. His eyes meet mine with a seriousness that cuts through the air. Not like in the songs or commercials, he adds, his voice softening. I'm not a jolly fat man in a red suit. That's what they turned me into, a gimmick to sell things. But I've existed long before the world thought of me as a toy salesman. That doesn't make sense, I murmur, though part of me wants to believe him. It doesn't have to, he says, stepping closer. What matters is what you felt since you came here. That spark, that tingling of wonder. That's what I'm trying to keep alive. But with each passing year, fewer believe. Fewer remember. He leans against the counter, and for the first time, I notice how tired he looks. His thinness is almost skeletal, and his breathing has a labored rhythm. I'm dying, boy, he confesses, his tone seeking no pity. Not from illness, but because the idea of what I am is fading. I can't exist in a world that doesn't believe in giving without expecting anything in return. His words hit like a slap. The shop, the toys, the old man. Everything starts to fit together into a puzzle I still don't fully understand, but can't escape. I am standing before something that shouldn't exist, something that defies everything I know. And yet, here it is, right in front of me. Real. Santa Claus walks toward a heavy curtain at the back of the shop. The sound of his steps, barely a whisper, seems to fill the entire space. He stops and turns to me, his weary but attentive eyes measuring my readiness. Come with me, he says, pulling back the curtain with a slow gesture. There's something you need to see. At first, I don't move. My legs feel stiff and my mind scrambles for an excuse not to follow. But something in his voice, in his gaze, compels me forward. It's as if the very air in the shop pushes me toward him. Behind the curtain is an old wooden door with a rusty handle. Santa Claus opens it, and immediately, a gentle warmth and a faint golden glow seep through from the other side. I stop at the threshold, my heart pounding. The old man steps in first, without looking back, as if he knows I'll follow. And I do. The room I enter makes no sense. There are no visible walls, just an infinite space bathed in golden light that seems to emanate from the air itself. Objects float everywhere. Old photographs, worn-out toys, handwritten letters, all suspended as though waiting to be discovered. This is the heart of the shop, Santa Claus says, walking among the floating objects as if they are old friends. This is where I keep what people have forgotten, dreams, memories, the small acts of love that once shaped their lives. I approach one of the floating objects, a photograph framed in wood. In it, I see a small boy, perhaps 6 years old, holding a wooden airplane with a radiant smile. My heart skips a beat. That boy is me. That belongs to you, Santa Claus says, noticing my reaction. Your father spent weeks building that airplane for you, but time, haste, the blows of life, they make us forget what truly matters. I touch the photograph, and suddenly, the memory crashes over me like a wave. I can feel the rough hands of my father giving me the airplane, his shy smile as he said, "It's not perfect, but I made it for you." I can smell the wood, feel the weight of the toy in my hands, hear my laughter as I tossed it into the air. I had forgotten that day, but now it feels as vivid as if it were happening again. "What is this place?" I ask, my voice trembling. "It's a refuge," Santa Claus replies, his tone heavy with melancholy. "A place for the essential, for what should never be lost." Suddenly, something changes. The temperature in the room drops and the golden light flickers, like a candle about to go out. Santa Claus stops, his expression hardening. "Someone is here," he says in a low voice. A chill runs down my spine, and I look around. In the dimness, beyond the glow of the memories, something moves. A tall, dark figure emerges from the shadows. I can't make out its features, but its presence is overwhelming, as if it's draining the warmth from the room. It stands motionless, watching us, and though it says nothing, I feel its intent weighing on my chest. "We need to hurry," Santa Claus murmurs, clenching his fists. "Not everything that enters here is welcome." The figure takes a step forward, and the air grows heavier. My instincts scream at me to run, but my feet are rooted to the ground. Then Santa Claus grabs my arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "Remember what you've seen," he says, his voice firm yet urgent. "You'll need it." The figure takes another step, and the golden light of the room begins to dim, as though it's being consumed by the darkness. The golden light returns, faint and flickering at first, as if the room is struggling to recover from the presence of the dark figure. Santa Claus releases my arm and begins moving among the floating objects with a newfound urgency. I still feel trapped by the vastness of the space, but now also by the sense that I'm not alone, that something else is lurking in the shadows. "Every object you see here has a story," Santa Claus says without looking at me, as though trying to calm me with his words. They're fragments of lives that people left behind, moments that mattered and were later forgotten. He stops by an old doll, its paint faded and its glass eyes dull. He picks it up carefully and shows it to me. This belonged to a little girl who lived in a poor neighborhood in London. Her father made it for her when he couldn't afford anything else. To that girl, this doll was everything. But life went on, it was left in a drawer, and the memory was lost. The doll floats back into the air, as though the very atmosphere is returning it to its place. My gaze travels across the space, noticing more objects, each one charged with a palpable presence. A music box emitting a barely audible melody, a wooden train with signs of wear, a letter with faded ink. Each one seems to vibrate with a unique energy. "And all of them?" I ask. "Who do they belong to?" "To anyone willing to remember them," Santa Claus replies with a weary smile. Before I can process his words, A sound breaks through the air. A laugh, low but firm, echoes from the room's entrance. I turn quickly and see a man entering. He's wearing an impeccable black coat, and his face, though handsome, is marked by an expression of disdain that chills the atmosphere. "Richard, glad to see you're still standing," the newcomer says, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Santa Claus frowns but doesn't look surprised. "Charles," he murmurs with a mix of resignation and respect. The man steps forward, and I immediately recognize him. Though younger than I'd imagined, the energy emanating from him is unmistakable. Charles Dickens, the author whose work defined the struggle between darkness and light in his time. Behind him enters another man, his posture proud, his face chiseled like marble. His attire is old-fashioned, with a hat in his hand and a powdered wig that gives him a theatrical air. "Sir Richard Steele," the latter says, inclining his head slightly toward me. "A pleasure." Before I can respond, Dickens turns to Santa Claus. "How can you keep going, old friend, in a world that no longer has room for what you represent?" "The need for kindness never disappears, Charles," Santa Claus responds, his calmness seeming forced. "It only hides beneath layers of cynicism." "Ah, cynicism," interrupts a new voice. It's sharper, cutting, sounding like the snap of a door closing. A third man enters the room, his modern suit and polished shoes making him stand out among the historical figures. He carries a briefcase, and his eyes scan everything around him with disapproval. "You're living in a dream," the man says with a cold smile. "Kindness, joy. What good are they in the real world? Everything is measured in results, in numbers. This place, this old man with his shop, are relics that should have faded away decades ago." Santa Claus doesn't respond immediately. His gaze shifts to me, as if he's waiting for me to say something, to defend what I've seen and felt in this place. But the man's words hit me hard. Could he be right? Is all of this just a fantasy, a refuge for those who don't want to face reality? "You're wrong," Dickens says, his tone full of indignation. "You can't reduce humanity to numbers. Without kindness, without joy, what's left of us?" "Strength," the man responds, unfazed. "Ambition. That's what drives the world now, not this outdated sentimentality." Doubts grow inside me. I look at Santa Claus, hoping he'll say something, refute the man in the suit with an irrefutable truth. But he remains silent, his expression wearier than ever. "What do you say?" the man asks, turning to me. His eyes lock onto mine, challenging me. "Will you keep believing in children's stories, or will you accept the reality of how the world works?" The air seems to freeze. Everyone in the room, even the floating objects, seems to be waiting for my response. But I don't know what to say. The tension in the room is unbearable. The man in the suit keeps staring at me with those cold, challenging eyes. Santa Claus remains silent, as though the weight of the words has aged him even more in mere minutes. Dickens and Sir Richard look expectant, their faces marked by concern. Santa Claus finally breaks the silence. "Come with me," he says in a tone so low I can barely hear it. The man in the suit smirks with smug satisfaction, but says nothing. I follow as Santa Claus moves away from the visitors and leads me to a corner of the room. There, in a wooden frame so old it looks like it might crumble at the slightest touch, is a mirror. Its surface doesn't reflect the room or even my own image. Instead, it seems to be filled with liquid smoke, slowly swirling, forming indistinct shapes. "This mirror won't show you who you are," Santa Claus says, placing a hand on the frame. "It will show you who you could be." I take a step forward, mesmerized by the swirling smoke. At first, I see nothing clearly, but then the shapes begin to take form, and what I see takes my breath away. It's me, or at least a version of me. I'm sitting in a gray room, its bare walls enclosing a single window that lets in no light. My face is pale, my eyes sunken, and the expression on my face is nothing. Empty. In my hands, I hold a pile of papers, but I let them fall to the floor without interest. There are no sounds, no life, just me, consumed by the indifference and exhaustion of someone who has stopped searching for any kind of meaning. That can't be real, I murmur, stepping back. "It's a possible future," Santa Claus says, his voice heavy with gravity. "If you keep shutting yourself off from wonder, from love, from everything that truly matters, that's what awaits you." "I don't believe it," I say, but my voice sounds weak even to me. "What you believe doesn't matter," he replies. "What you do does." I look at the mirror again, and the image changes. Now, I'm walking down a crowded street, but I pass by people like a ghost, invisible and disconnected. No one looks at me. No one speaks to me. I belong nowhere. The sense of loneliness radiating from that scene is so overwhelming that I want to look away, but I can't. Santa Claus leans against the mirror's frame, and his breathing becomes heavier. I notice that he's trembling. His face, already pale, now looks almost translucent. "What's happening to you?" I ask, alarmed. "I'm disappearing," he says, with a calmness that's unsettling. "My strength comes from belief in what I represent. Every time someone stops believing in kindness, in the act of giving without expecting anything in return, I lose a part of myself." "That can't be," I say, a lump forming in my throat. "But it is," he says, with a faint smile that doesn't reach his eyes. "Look at me. I'm here because there's still a spark in you, a small part that wants to believe. But if that spark goes out, so will I." My hands tremble and I feel torn. On one hand, I want to shout at the man in the suit, to challenge his cynicism and cold logic. But on the other hand, I can't ignore that something inside me doubts. A small but powerful voice telling me that maybe all of this is just a fantasy. Santa Claus leans closer to me, his eyes shining with an unexpected intensity. "You have a decision to make," he says. "Not for me, but for yourself. For what you want your life to be. For what you want it to mean." The mirror darkens, and my reflection, or what might have been my reflection, fades away. I stand there, staring at my own shadow in the empty glass, as Santa Claus steps back with effort, as though carrying an impossible weight on his shoulders. A sharp sound, like something breaking, echoes through the shop. The golden light that had once softly illuminated the space begins to flicker, growing weaker with each passing second. The floating objects, the memories and toys that had seemed so full of life, now fall slowly to the ground, dimming, as if something had stolen their essence. The man in the suit stands at the center of the room, his arms crossed, a triumphant smile on his face. "It was about time all this ended," he says coldly. "This place has no place in a world that moves forward." Santa Claus, weak and trembling, faces him. "You don't understand what you're destroying," he says, his voice shaking. "This isn't just a shop. It's a refuge, a reminder that hope still exists." "Hope?" the man repeats, letting out a dry laugh. "What good is hope? People don't need refuges. They need to face reality. This fantasy is doomed." I feel a weight on my chest, as if the air itself is pressing down on me. Everything around me seems to be collapsing. The colors of the toys fade, their shapes losing definition, as if they're being erased from the world. The shop, so warm and magical just moments ago, now feels cold and desolate. "What are you doing?" I ask the man, my voice breaking from confusion and fear. "I'm doing nothing," he replies, without taking his eyes off Santa Claus. "This is destroying itself because there's nothing left to sustain it. The beliefs that kept it alive are relics of the past." Santa Claus collapses to his knees, and my heart stops for a moment. His figure, always fragile but steadfast, now seems like a mere specter, a shadow of what it once was. "I can't." "Stop it," he murmurs, as if speaking more to himself than to me. The ground trembles slightly, and I see cracks begin to spread across the walls of the shop. The lights flicker more intensely, and for a moment I feel trapped, as if the very space around us is closing in. My instincts scream at me to run, to leave this place before it collapses entirely. But then I look at Santa Claus, and something inside me refuses to move. "You can't just destroy this," I say, turning to the man in the suit. My voice is stronger now, though my body is still trembling. "Maybe you don't understand, but this shop, it means something. To him, to me, to those who can still remember what's important." "And what are you going to do about it?" the man asks, his tone mocking. "Save it with an emotional speech? This place is doomed because the world has abandoned it, and you know it too." Doubt. That damned doubt. His words pierce my mind like needles. What can I do? What difference can one person make in a world so determined to forget? Santa Claus looks at me, his eyes still shining with that mix of sadness and hope. "It's not about fighting the world," he says with effort. "It's about deciding what kind of person you want to be. This place won't disappear as long as someone believes in what it represents." The ground shakes again, and the cracks in the walls widen. I can feel the weight of the decision I have to make. I can run, leave all this behind, and return to my life, though I know it will never be the same. Or I can stay, not knowing how, not knowing if I even have the power to stop this destruction. I look at the man in the suit, whose smug smile now seems less certain. I look at Santa Claus, whose very existence hangs by a thread. And finally, I look within myself. Is this who I want to be? A bystander who watches as something truly valuable disappears. I clench my fists, my body trembling, not just from fear, but from a determination I didn't know I possessed. "I'm not leaving," I say, my voice firm for the first time. "I won't let this be lost." The ground continues to tremble. The cracks grow, and the golden light that once filled the space has been reduced to a faint glow in the center of the shop. Santa Claus, still on his knees, looks as though he's on the verge of vanishing completely. Yet his eyes remain fixed on me, conveying something I can't describe, a mix of faith and desperation. "Look in the box," he murmurs, his voice barely a whisper. "What you need is already with you." The box. I look down at my hands and realize I'm still holding the small wooden box of toy soldiers he gave me earlier. I've carried it all this time without even thinking to open it. Now, it seems to vibrate with an energy of its own, as though waiting to be discovered. I fall to my knees in front of Santa Claus and place the box on the ground. With trembling hands, I open the lid. The toy soldiers are there, perfectly aligned, but something else catches my attention. A smaller object hidden at the bottom. Carefully, I pick it up and hold it to the light. It's a key. Not an ordinary key, but one that looks ancient, with intricate engravings that seem to form shifting patterns under the golden glow. Its weight in my hand feels strange, as though it holds more than just metal. "What is this?" I ask, but Santa Claus only smiles faintly. "It's yours," he says in a threadbare voice. "It always has been." The key pulses in my palm, and suddenly, memories crash over me like a wave. I remember a door in the house where I grew up, a door my father always kept carefully locked. As a child, he promised that when I was brave enough, he would give me the key to open it, but that moment never came. My father died before he could fulfill his promise, and the door remained locked forever. Or so I thought. "It can't be," I murmur, tears filling my eyes. Santa Claus nods slowly. The magic isn't in the key itself, but in what it represents. Courage, faith, the ability to open what you've locked away inside. The man in the suit laughs, though his laughter sounds strained. "Is that all? A key to unlock useless memories? How pathetic." But I don't listen to him. Something within me begins to shift. I feel a warmth growing from the key in my hand, spreading through my chest, filling me with a clarity I haven't felt before. I look at the faded toys and fallen memories. Suddenly, I understand. It's not about the objects themselves. What makes this place special isn't what it contains, but what it evokes. The capacity to believe, to give, to remember that there are things in life that are priceless. Santa Claus looks at me with his tired eyes, and I see in them a spark that hasn't yet been extinguished. "The choice isn't between running or staying," he says. "It's between forgetting or remembering, between locking the doors of your soul or opening them wide." I grip the key tightly and stand up. I feel something new inside me, not exactly bravery, but a deep resolution, a connection to something greater than myself. I look at the man in the suit, whose expression is no longer triumphant, but confused. "You're wrong," I say with a firmness that even surprises me. Hope, kindness, they aren't relics of the past. They're still here, hidden, waiting for someone to see them. The man steps back, his smile fading. I raise the key, and the golden light that remains in the shop seems to intensify, as if responding to my action. In that moment, I know what I must do. The shop doesn't need saving through force, but through faith. faith that there is still something in this world worth preserving. "Give them a reason to believe," murmurs Santa Claus, his voice stronger now, as if my determination has restored some of his strength. And that is exactly what I'll do. The golden glow returns with force, flooding the shop as if it had never disappeared. The toys float once more in the air, their colors vibrant and full of life. The trembling ground stills, the cracks in the walls close, and the oppressive cold vanishes, replaced by a warmth that seems to emanate from the very space. It's as if the shop has been reborn. Santa Claus, though still frail, rises to his feet. His figure seems a little more solid, his eyes brighter. He looks at me with an expression of gratitude and pride, like a teacher watching their student overcome their greatest challenge. "You did it," he says, his voice soft but steady. "I'm not sure what I did," I admit, though I feel a profound peace within me. "You chose to remember," he replies. "And in that act, you chose to believe. That's all this shop needs to exist. Faith in kindness, in the power of giving and receiving without expecting anything in return." I look around at the toys and memories, now floating with a life of their own. Each seems to silently sing its story, whispering small truths into the air. But I know my time here is over. The shop has shown me what I needed to see, but the outside world awaits me. "What now?" I ask. Santa Claus smiles, and there's something immense in that smile, something that transcends exhaustion and age. "Now, you carry what you've learned with you. This place doesn't need to stay with you physically to remain alive. It's in every act of kindness, in every moment you choose to give instead of take." I walk toward the door, the box of toy soldiers still in my hands. When I open it, the cold night breeze of Battersea greets me. But something is different. The streetlights seem warmer, the shadows less menacing. It's as if the whole world has changed, though I know the real change is within me. I take a step outside, then another, and when I turn to look at the shop one last time, it's gone. Only an empty, dark alley remains, silent, as though the place had never existed. I walk through the streets in silence, the echo of my footsteps resonating on the cobblestones. But as I go, I begin to notice small things, details that I would have overlooked before. A child drops a toy on the sidewalk, and instead of ignoring it, a man picks it up and hands it back with a smile. A woman, someone I've never seen before, leaves a bag of bread at an elderly neighbor's door and walks away without waiting for thanks. And then there are the objects. In a park, I find a small rag doll on a bench, dirty but intact, as if waiting for someone to discover it. Further along, a wooden train appears in the window of a shop I had never noticed before. Each of these discoveries fills me with a strange warmth, as if the shop were still with me, whispering in every corner of the world. I keep walking, the weight of the key in my pocket a constant reminder of what I saw and learned. I now know my life cannot remain the same. It's not about grand, heroic gestures, but about small daily choices. Choosing generosity over indifference, connection over isolation. The shop may have disappeared, but its magic persists, not in objects or places, but but in simple human acts that build a better world. And in that moment, I understand that this is my true gift. Weeks have passed since that night in Battersea, but the shop remains alive in my memory, as real as the air I breathe. Though I never saw it again, its presence accompanies me in every corner of my life. I'm no longer the same man who first crossed that door, tired and empty. Something changed, something I can't fully explain but feel in every heartbeat. I started with small, almost insignificant things. One day, as I walked past a toy store, I bought a pair of wooden trains. I left them on a park bench, the same one where I used to sit and watch without participating. I didn't wait to see who found them, but something inside me knew they would reach the right hands. Another day, I wrapped a book that had been meaningful to me and left it in front of a house with a note that read, "Free Smiles." I didn't know who lived there, but it didn't matter. The act of giving without expecting anything in return was enough. As the days went by, I realized the world was full of opportunities to create small miracles. A coin in a street musician's hat, a smile for someone lost in thought, a kind conversation with the elderly man who always walks alone in my neighborhood. None of these gestures would change the world, but together they created something, an invisible web that connected people. The signs of the shop also continued to appear. On the corner of my desk, I found a wooden soldier I didn't remember placing there. At a market, I saw a child holding a doll very similar to the one I had seen in the park that night. And every time I noticed these small traces, I felt a warmth in my chest, a certainty that I was on the right path. Christmas Eve arrived with an unusual stillness. That night, I walked through my neighborhood with a bag full of toys and books I had collected over the weeks. I left each one in strategic places, in front of a door, on a bench, under a tree in the park. I didn't sign anything. I didn't wait for thanks. The joy of imagining the smiles when they were found was enough. On my way back, I saw a little girl pick up one of the books I had left. She held it in her hands as if it were a treasure, and something in her expression made me stop. For an instant, our eyes met. She didn't say anything, but her smile, so pure and full of gratitude, said everything. In that moment, I understood something Santa Claus had tried to teach me. The magic of giving isn't in the object, but in the act, in the connection it creates, in the invisible bridge that links two people, even if only for an instant. Today, I am a different man. I don't wear a red suit or deliver presents in a sleigh, but in every small act of kindness, I carry with me the essence of what I learned in that shop. Perhaps I can't change the whole world, but I can touch the lives I encounter along the way, and that, I believe, is enough. The ghost shop may have disappeared physically, but its spirit lives on in every person who chooses to believe in the power of wonder, kindness, and giving without expecting anything in return. In this gray world, small lights can still shine, and I, like many others, now carry one of those lights.